Okay, well, this is an uncomfortable video to make, but it has to be done. The Freedom Convoy from 2022, in my opinion, is what propelled Canadian politics to a bigger stage. Before the Freedom Convoy in 2022, sure, you may have paid attention to politics. I certainly did not, but I also know there are hundreds of thousands of other people in Canada, potentially millions, that also did not pay attention to Canadian politics before the Freedom Convoy happened. The Freedom Convoy gave people hope. It was a voice. We were locked up for a couple of years by that point. All this stuff was going on. Our prime minister was making a name for himself in the most horrible way. And then this happened. It was like, whoa, other people feel this way too. And it got global headlines, international attention. I mean, it felt like the whole world was watching Canada evolve. And then it got shattered by government overreach, which was probably predictable. So why are we still talking about the Freedom Convoy? Well, we're now reaching yet another impasse. It involves Pierre Poilievre yet again, but more specifically, Tamara Lich and Chris Barber. Now, I owe this entire YouTube channel's success to the Freedom Convoy. And I'm going to go ahead and say that every other YouTube channel that also talks about politics in this space that you follow, all of the people owe their YouTube channels to the Freedom Convoy, because none of these channels existed before the Freedom Convoy. And if they did, they were so unpopular that nobody cared. I'm not saying that you have to blindly support every single thing about the convoy, but most people in this space absolutely support the convoy, including Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the opposition, until now. And so we're talking about the fact that it's not good. It's not good for Pierre, and it's not good for Tamara Lich and Chris Barber. So what can we do about it? Well, we can keep talking about it. And that's what we're going to do in this entire video. So before you make your judgment on my opinion, before you downvote or unsubscribe, please, I encourage you to watch the full thing, because we're going into details about how important it is to talk about Tamara Lich and Chris Barber, the Freedom Convoy, and how Pierre Poilievre has been silent about it. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I really want to encourage everyone to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't yet already. It does really help grow the channel. We are talking about how to protect yourself, especially in this world. How to protect yourself online, which is a perfect segue into today's sponsor. This video is brought to you by today's sponsor, Private Internet Access. If you're fed up with government censorship and the government tracking and then selling your data, well, boy, oh boy, do I have a fix for you. Private Internet Access, my go-to VPN, is the best way to cloak yourself so that you can browse the internet anonymously. Also unlocks a whole bunch of censored news here in Canada, which is the Liberals' quota. In addition to that, when you have Hulu, Netflix, Disney Plus, it allows you to access content that is restricted by this country. So you can use American Netflix, French Netflix, Italian Netflix, whatever it is that you want. There are so many benefits to Private Internet Access, but my favorite is the fact that it works on so many different devices. One subscription protects unlimited amount of devices at the same time. You can also change your IP address to more than 91 countries around the world. If you use my link down below in the description or the pinned comment below, you'll get 83% off Private Internet Access today. Alternatively, you could go to piavpn.com/sunshine to get the exact same discount. Thank you, Private Internet Access, for sponsoring today's video. All right. So what's breaking headlines, what's breaking news across Canada right now is this post that Tamara Lich made on X on July 19th. We learned last evening that the Crown has submitted their materials to our legal teams for our upcoming sentencing hearing. They are seeking a 7-year prison sentence for myself and 8 years for Chris Barber. I haven't seen their documents yet, but hopefully I'll receive them today and can provide more details. With that, we are eastbound and headed for Ottawa, which is, I mean, like, it's not an optimistic post. It's not a sad post. It's just incredibly sad to see that the repercussions are 7 or 8 years for something that we all know to be not worth that time. I mean, that's absolutely insane. And so there's been different ways that people have been talking about this online. My way is arguably a little bit more, or maybe inarguably a little bit more aggressive than others. I've been saying this. I'm sorry, but if Pierre Poilievre doesn't speak up about Tamara and Chris potentially going to jail, I'm going to have to, or I'm not going to be able to support the Conservative Party. Now, I understand that's quite aggressive and that's very much out there. Another approach has been from Mario, which is a little bit more educational. Canadian citizens. Tamara Lich facing 7 years, non-violent protest. Chris Barber facing 2 years, destruction of truck, non-violent protest. Whereas immigrants like Manpreet Gill involved in liquor store robbery, wrong way highway 401 crash, killed 4, including baby, got 5.5 months. Sentence kept under 6 months to avoid automatic deportation. And another instance of a tried to buy sex from a 15-year-old, got house arrest. Judge didn't want to delay his citizenship. And Singh exposed himself for 20 minutes inside a woman's home while installing internet. House arrest. Judge cited deportation risk. Ask yourself why. Now, there is no right or wrong way to, interpret the silence from the Conservative Party, because of course, who do you blame for this sentencing? Well, the judicial system in Canada. This is insane what's happening now. Am I lashing out at a party that literally can't really do anything about it? Yeah, probably. But also the silence is a little bit more, it speaks more volume than what people realize. No Conservative Party member has said anything about this until one guy did. Big Balls Dean. Here it is, I say on X. A politician with the biggest balls has spoken. Conservative MP Dean Allison speaking up about Tamara Lich and Chris Barber. Come on, the rest of you. Conservative Party headquarters. Dean Allison said this. He quote tweeted tomorrow's post. This is insanity. This liberal government treats actual real criminals better than this. Steal a car, no problem. Home invasions, no problem. Murder a grandmother, no problem. Exploit children, no problem. This country is run by useful idiots. And I agree. I mean, it's absolutely insane that we've gotten to this point where it was a non-violent protest, and to do 7 or 8 years when you have literally people going out and murdering Canadians, bro, and they're getting less than 6 months to avoid deportation. What the fuck is going on with this country? Like, how can you just sit in silence and not say anything about it? Nothing. And so that's kind of where we are right now, where my anger is kind of geared towards. So not to put Mario on blast, I might seem like I have a bone to pick with him by selecting again another one of his posts, which I don't have a bone to pick with him. But he said this on X. For everyone who's trying to pressure Pierre Poilievre for a statement on Chris Barber and Tamara Lich, enough. You all need to stop. He's the leader of the opposition. There's a concept called judice. The court cannot and should not be influenced by politicians making public statements. So that is true. Politicians are not actually allowed to, or they're not supposed to talk about ongoing court cases, which could swing the opinion of judge or jury. Except Marco Mendicino has done that, I believe, with Paul Bernardo. And I believe also Pierre Poilievre has spoken about Paul Bernardo while that was ongoing. So again, it's not really like a new thing. Sometimes people abide by it. Sometimes people don't. It's just more of a recommendation, because I'm not actually sure what the repercussions are from this. If Pierre were to speak up about this, if it were to breach any sort of legalities, which more on that later, it doesn't breach any legalities. So to go on, Mario says it would look horrendous on Pierre Poilievre to do that while it's before the courts. That's why he hasn't said anything. He's not abandoning you, them, or anyone else. Pierre can talk about it afterwards if he chooses, and blah, 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 blah. And again, I just disagree cold-heartedly with that take. Pierre Poilievre's popularity catapulted forwards because of the Freedom Convoy. Do you remember anything of substance that Pierre Poilievre said before the Freedom Convoy? I don't. I know he was a nerdy guy with glasses that was a bit of a chihuahua from either the backbench, middle bench, or maybe sometimes the front bench. And he really didn't have a name for himself until the Freedom Convoy happened, which, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was either Pierre or his wife or a combination of both that had told the truckers publicly at the beginning, like on X, to go home when the convoy first got there. They were very upset with it. And then a rebranding and a reshifting happened where they started to, give food and coffee and whatever to the truckers, and then leveraged the Freedom Convoy to bolster his popularity, which won him the conservative leadership election, and then became this figure of Pierre Poilievre, which was the David and Goliath, the two, bohemians going after each other, and which eventually resulted in a banker winning. So anyways, Pierre Poilievre, I believe, owes a lot of his popularity to the convoy. I mean, still to this day, he thanks truckers and farmers for their hard work, which is not something I believe he was always going out of his way of saying before the convoy. I'm not saying he has to bend over at everything the Freedom Convoy says or does, but what's going on with Tamara Lich and Chris Barber is so obviously not right that you'd think that he would have to say something about it. So now let's take a look at what Eva has to say on X. Tamara Lich and Chris Barber were only charged with mischief and a few other minor offenses, and ultimately convicted of mischief, a charge about as serious as doing a burnout in a parking lot. Yet before they even stepped into a courtroom, they were publicly branded as insurrectionists and terrorists. These are serious accusations, ones they were never charged with, let alone convicted of. Let's not pretend the sub judice rule is actually being followed. This rule is meant to protect the integrity of ongoing legal proceedings, but it does not ban all discussion. Fair and accurate reporting of court facts is allowed. General comments and on related policies or issues are allowed, as long as they don't create a real or substantial risk of interfering with the court outcome. Still, politicians routinely misuse sub judice not to protect the courts, but to avoid accountability. They invoke it as an excuse to stay silent on controversial issues, especially when it involves their own failures. That silence is political, not legal. And yet, in this case, there was no hesitation to speak. Politicians, lawyers, and even judges got ahead of the facts and pushed a narrative that was never supported by the law. Now, Eva's not the only person to speak up about this. Keith Wilson, we all know who that is, says the ongoing criminal mischief trial, now approaching 2 years, has consumed millions of taxpayers' dollars with an already overburdened justice system. Daily instances of ineffective catch and release policies highlight the strain on our courts, where scarce resources are stretched thin. Prolonged delays and disproportionate allocation of judicial resources to a single case undermine public confidence in the administration of justice. These concerns can be raised by Mr. Poilievre without violating the sub judice rule. He can advocate for a fairer and more efficient system that serves all Canadians, but has chosen not to do so. Rupa on X. I remember getting a lot of pushback during the campaign from Mr. Pierre Poilievre when I pointed out that Pierre's silence on the state's ongoing prosecution of Tamara and Chris Barber. Back then, the excuse was, let him win first, then he'll take a stance. What is the excuse now for the continued silence? And so again, it's not just about, well, it's not at all about attacking Pierre as a politician. It's his team, him as a person, unable to make the right decisions. If you don't stand for anything, you will fall for everything. And so this brings us to right now, at a time where you have two people, chances are you know exactly who Tamara and Chris Barber are. You should, at least by this point in 2025. you can't stay silent on it. I mean, everybody is completely outraged. Even liberals are going, look, I think that they probably deserve something, but 7 or 8 years for that is insane. I mean, everybody is outraged by this, except for the entire Conservative Party. The Conservative Party would not be nearly half as popular as what it is now without the Freedom Convoy. It brought so much attention and enthusiasm to the mix. I mean, for crying out loud, for the past 3 years, the Conservative Party MPs have been treated like rock stars, which has never been a thing ever in Canadian history. You want to know why? Because there was never a protest or a movement that was as popular as what the Freedom Convoy was. It's not the party that made politics interesting. It's the people that then began to have an interest in politics that made politics interesting. It just so happened that the people that were in the party was the Conservative Party. Okay, I don't think at all for a second it's appropriate to stay silent on this matter. And in fact, right now, going into the by-election that Pierre Poilievre is scheduled to do in less than a month from now, it's not going to be as easy for him to win as what people think. Let's go back in time to 2009. I posted this on X today. For those who think Pierre Poilievre is an easy win at this upcoming by-election, let's take a look at history. In 2009, the Haliburton-Kawartha Lakes Brock by-election became a dramatic chapter in Ontario politics. On February 4th, a writ was issued for a March 5th by-election after progressive Conservative MPP Laurie Scott resigned, a move designed to let PC leader John Tory, who had no seat, run in this Conservative stronghold. Sound familiar? The decision created a lot of immediate backlash, with a Lindsay Post poll showing nearly 70% of locals disapproved of Scott stepping down just for Tory's benefit, and almost half said it made them less likely to vote for the PC party. The campaign was extremely heated, and most people called this a major controversy. John Tory, being a politician from urban Toronto, struggled to connect with those from a rural riding. His moderate positions alienated some of the Conservative voters. Many saw him as an outsider, and his campaign suffered from low enthusiasm and turnout. Meanwhile, Liberal candidate Rick Johnson was decently well known from his riding in 2007 from being the former Ontario Public School Boards Association president, ultimately leading to John Tory losing. So again, we've already seen in 2009, sure, at the provincial level, what it looks like for someone to be parachuted in to a completely different riding than what he's used to, and it not working out. I think that there is still, I don't know, man. I feel like I'm holding on to desperation at this point. I feel like there is time for a course correction, a massive course correction. You're heading for Australia. You need to turn the wheel and go the opposite way, buddy. Like you're just opposites. Okay. Stop going that way. Start going this way. And I feel like maybe that's just a lost hope. I don't know. I don't know if I sound pathetic thinking that Pierre Poilievre can turn this around, but I'm now at the point where if you're not going to publicly speak on behalf of the Freedom Convoy head figures, right, Tamara Lich and Chris Barber, and how the justice system is being manipulated and screwed to screw them over, then I don't think I can support you anymore. That's just where I stand. If I had to pick between the Freedom Convoy or Pierre Poilievre, I'm sorry, but I'm going with the Freedom Convoy because I would rather go with the grassroots movement than a career politician. Now, all of this is meaningless because I don't have a vote in the by-election, and federally speaking, we don't have a vote in another 3.5, 4 years. But in my mind, I'm seeing through the veil, and I don't like what I'm seeing. And it turns out that even lawyers agree. He's not being silent because of legal reasons. Poilievre is being silent because he's choosing to. So where does that leave you, Canada? How does that make you feel?